Hey guys, it's Tricia Carr. I have new exciting things going on with my Mystic Arts Academy. You can now subscribe to receive all of the live monthly content for about a third of the investment of a single class. Included are at least one downloadable guided meditation per month, 2 live events ranging from classes, channeled messages, group readings, intuitive development guidance, Q&A sessions, and tons of community. You'll also have access to a private Facebook community for fellowship and support, and this space is kept super sacred and high vibrational. Your subscription gives you access to the whole library of classes and live events, which are on a vast array of topics. All events are offered online by Zoom video call, and many are also offered live in person at my studio here in Los Angeles. Subscribing to the Mystic Arts Academy is also a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and engage on a deeper level. I'm offering the subscription at a super low rate of $22 a month. Joining now locks in this rate for as long as you're subscribed. Click on the description of this episode or go to my website, triciacarcharm.com, and click on Mystic Arts Academy. I look forward to connecting. Welcome to Charmed Life, a multimedia podcast discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I am your host, Tricia Carr. Welcome to this very special episode. I say that every time, don't I? Well, I have a really exciting guest. I just came across his work, and we're vibing so much, and I'm not going to talk too much in advance, but his name is Thomas Miller. He's a podcaster. He has 2 podcasts, one that is daily called Fun Astrology, that I really want you to get going on and tell me all about what's going on astrologically, and also Subconscious Mind Mastery, which has been since 2013. Wow. He's also an audiobook narrator for a couple of authors, Fred Dodson and Stephen Forrest. So welcome to the program, Thomas Miller.
Tricia, thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation. Love your work too, and thank you for having me.
Well, you went in like a really diligent guest, and you looked at some of my stuff, and I'm really glad you did. Not that I expect people to do prep, but it's really cool because we're vibing on the work that each of us is doing, and we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about.
Well, and I'll tell you, after I looked at it, I got intimidated. I had to do a lot of meditating.
Stop that! Are you kidding me? I'm intimidated.
Wow,
yeah, that's so
you are
sweet.
knocking the cover off the ball. Congratulations for putting the message out and doing your work. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well, I'll tell you. So, Subconscious Mind Mastery, I can't believe it. Well, we unfold things when we're ready to unfold them.
Sure.
It's a really, really great podcast. So, I don't know if you know this because I don't know if I've mentioned it on any of the work that you may have seen of mine, but I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. It's something that I just added into what I do, and as in the last year. And I'm actually still finishing my residency in college as a clinical hypnotherapist, but so Subconscious Mind Mastery is like my jam, right?
Right in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I did a talk at a retreat just this past year, and the name of the talk that I did, the workshop I did, was called Quantum Mind Mastery. So
oh, wow.
Some synchronicity there.
Cool. No, for sure. I've thought about getting into it, and then I just look at my time commitments.
Yeah.
And right now the audiobooks are part of where the energy is.
Yeah.
This work that Majana, my partner, and she has her own podcast called Life After Life.
Yes.
The work that we're doing together is really taking off. The 2 podcast numbers are just going through the roof. So I figure right now you just lean into the energy that's there, and that's where it is. So I'll get there one day.
Absolutely. And I was actually doing something really along the lines of hypnotherapy and using hypnosis, because meditation and hypnosis, that's really about getting into the state and working with the subconscious mind. But for a while I was essentially doing that, and then I came across this hypnotherapy college, which kind of just gave me a new lens and So yeah, where the energy is, we're omnidimensional. We have endless supply of excitement about things that we want to do.
I'll tell you what, this whole hypnotherapy subconscious package is something that you want to just go deep right off the bat here?
Yes.
All
543-210. Deep sleep.
Okay. All right. Well, people can binge. I get these, as you do too, I'm sure. You get these emails of people that say, "Oh, I've been binging on your podcasts."
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the most honoring things in the world, that somebody would take their time to listen to not just one, but to binge. I mean, I think of that.
Yeah.
So they can binge on the story, but basically, in a real short synopsis, I was raised in a very fundamental family and environment, fundamental Christian, Baptist, and Bible church background in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I mean, not only the buckle of the Bible belt, but that little, the thing that sticks out that goes in the hole. We're talking the middle of the buckle of the Bible belt environment. Oral Roberts University was just down the street, and that was what I grew up in. And my brother and I, neither of us rebelled, so we were good little kids. I mean, you would wanted to have been our parents, because we were pretty easy, really. It wasn't until college that I started questioning it. And then I basically, as you say in the church, kind of lived a double life, really, for most of my adult life. I tipped my hat to it, but I knew there was something off, but I just did unconscious life. Yeah. Got married, had kids, did the thing. And it was all about, one gig to the next. I was producing TV shows. And it was after I got divorced twice at 48 years old that I finally stopped for a year and said, what is it about me that these people don't want to be around? So I turned the camera in instead of blaming everybody out. And that's what started me on this journey. And the first thing I had to do was throw away that old belief system, because it just, all the prayers and all the fasting and all the Bibles quoting scripture and everything didn't work. And one of the early things I found was Bob Proctor, and he quoted Wernher von Braun, NASA Apollo engineer, who said, basically that we can launch a rocket from a place in Florida, circle the moon, land it on a crater if we wanted to, bring it back and drop it next to a boat because of the physics of the universe. And I thought, with the background I had, which included a minor in biblical studies in college, I was going to go into the ministry. I thought that makes a lot of sense, that the spiritual world would have to have the same symmetry.
I love that.
And that's what I started looking for. And that in essence set the journey in motion 10, 12 years ago. Well, I came across astrology, and that just, to me, that gave me the symmetry. And I know you've done episodes on sacred geometry. I saw one of your fairly recent episodes on sacred geometry. I mean, it all fits, right? It's all angles and lines and math and numbers. So there is the symmetry in the spiritual universe, and that's the beauty of it. Well, the other part of the little story was this thing about the subconscious, because during this year that I spent in basically isolation, I was working, but I just completely isolated myself. I actually bought an RV and lived in it for 1 year. 2009 was the year. That was my intention. And the unexpected benefit of that was that I ended up just dissecting my life. And I saw these patterns that would run back, and talk about the hypnosis work, where you're able to get in trance. My trance was not hypnotherapy. It was about a bottle and a half of wine at night. And I do not recommend that. I would recommend hypnotherapy right? 1,000 times over. But it did almost, in a sense, create a trance state.
Absolutely.
And I don't drink alcohol at all now. I gave it up almost 2 years ago. But it almost does. And in a trance state, a lot of stuff just started to pour out, and I would trace these patterns back. And one of the early patterns that I really isolated and got conscious about was that I had this ingrained fear paradigm, like everything. And I remembered an incident from my childhood when a friend and I were playing basketball, and the basketball bounced on the, just bounced off the backboard and hit their garage door, which happened to have glass panels across the top, and one of them broke. Mm-hmm. Man, I took off running. And the very wise neighbor, about 3 or 4 minutes later, I mean, it wasn't long, knock on our door, and she said, come here. Mm-hmm. It's fine that you guys were playing. That's fine. You needed to tell me, and come on, we're going to go clean it up.
Yeah.
And didn't make a big deal out of it. But I remembered that I just came in with this paradigm that the world was not a safe place.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
The more you learn about astrology, you learn about these things called the nodes of the moon. Mm-hmm. And the nodes of the moon show us what we brought in to this life to resolve. Mm-hmm. My south node of the moon that shows that background shows a fear-based paradigm. Yeah. Mostly from war. Oof. So, you keep meditating with this kind of thing. About, 6 months ago, this is fairly recent. I was getting ready for the day. That's one of my more meditative states, actually, mm-hmm. meditative times of the day. And this thing came to me that at some point in the past, here's your hypnotherapy again, there was some kind of a horrific, and then lights out. Mm. Like this sudden crescendo, and then back to the non-physical.
Wow.
I was like, wow. Yeah, it was kind of a shakeup, because I really connected with it. I could see the horror of this experience, whatever it was. Well, then I did a past life regression session mm-hmm. with a guy in actually out there in your neck of the woods. Mm. And he walked me back to, it was something in the medieval or just prior to the medieval period. And there was a guillotine involved. Mm. Wow. That's kind of when you're, and you get connected with that and feel that. Mm-hmm. It was like, whoa. Well, one more piece of the puzzle. Right now we are under one of the most fascinating and rare astrological and astronomical configurations that only happens once every 250 years. It's when the planets Saturn and Pluto conjoin. They're literally in alignment in the sky with one another in the sign of Capricorn. And that's the key. They align every about 28, 29 years, but not in Capricorn. And that's significant because Saturn rules Capricorn. So this is all taking place in Saturn's home, basically. Mm. Now, if we walk back that energy, basically it is massive transformational shifts of eras in history. It's when the United States was under that, basically.
When Saturn and Pluto were conjoined, or
actually Pluto was just in Capricorn. Saturn was over on the other side of the chart.
Okay.
But that's how powerful having Pluto, see the domino string as Pluto hits Capricorn. Mm-hmm. Saturn triggered it from the other side of the chart. And then Pluto moves into Aquarius, and that's where the main change happens.
And what is the timing on this? So is the conjoining between Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn now, and for approximately how long? And I have to say, I'm a Cap moon, so I love my Cap. I love my sea goatedness.
Oh, you have been affected. You've been feeling it. Yeah. Wowzer.
I'm Pisces sun, Cap moon. So, yeah. So, yeah, what is the timing on that?
No, definitely. So you've got a sextile going with the Pisces to Capricorn. And then, the actual conjunction happened on January 12th, 2020. Okay. That's when they were at the exact number of 22 degrees, 46 minutes. Hmm. But these are slow movers.
Yes.
It's Pluto 20 years around to go through a sign. And it takes Saturn 2.5 years to go through a sign. So this is nothing fast.
Not to mention the energies surrounding it. I know that for folks for whom their life is dedicated to this work, we feel it. I especially feel it in advance of whatever it is, honestly, even if it's something that's going on here, social, politically or something, or some kind of event that might be an act of God or nature. And I feel the tension. And then when it finally happens, I'm like, oh God, I can rest because it's the tension leading up to it. I guess we're anchoring. And then that's kind of when the bulk of the energy is there. But the breaking the seal actually. And then, but on the other side, the post shadow, as we call it for like Mercury retrograde and stuff, it's the energies around it too. Correct? Would you agree?
I think totally.
Yeah.
And if you look at the transits, probably, I've got a chart up over here, probably, I would say the last 6 to 12 months, depending on your sensitivity and your own planets in your own chart.
Yes, that also leads, because it's not like there are certain times, even if we talk about something like Mercury retrograde, there are certain retrogrades or other events that I'm a little bit peppy when it's going on, and other times it's a bit more dense, and it has to do with your particular grid, what it is that what you're aligning with specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your energy definitely is at play, but globally, and that's my fun astrology podcast, I just look at where everything is globally. Yeah. They're the same planets and the same energies that affect you in Los Angeles, me in Texas, and somebody in Africa and somebody in Australia. It doesn't matter. We're all under that energy at that moment for that day. I look at that a lot, probably differently. I don't do the horoscopes. It's like, these are the energies, and then how that affects you. That's where you have to get to know your own chart. That's the journey, right? Yes.
And that's a really great way to present it, I think, is in that, because I work with the moon. And so I'll present the sort of global lunar energy, but we all have our personal lunar cycle as well. So, how you relate, and knowing your own personal lunar cycle is like only you can know that, and how you bring, what energy you're bringing to the global experience. Or if you look at something like numerology, we have a universal year, but then you have a personal year that you're a part of your, that you're working with. But that's a really beautiful way to present it, with the kind of global or universal perspective, and allow the individual to find their sovereignty in the response to it.
That's absolutely right. It truly is. It is the weather, right? Yeah. They call it the astrological weather. Well, it is the weather. And whether you're wearing a raincoat or using an umbrella or staying indoors all day or whatever is your own experience of the weather, right? So that's a pretty good way to look at it. Great. I think the ramp up has been maybe about a year, certainly 6 months prior to January 12th. We're going to be in it for the next year. Basically 2020, we're not getting away from the macro energy that is so transformative. I mean, this is such transformational energy. The last time they were together in Capricorn, Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the Catholic Church door and said, we're not doing this way anymore. Wow. Right? The last time before that they were together in Capricorn was 1284. It was the end of the Dark Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance. So one thing that we have historically is that after the wars are over and after the transformation is complete, it is historically far better on the other side. Yes. So whatever this is for us, I think we are going to be far better on the other side. We just have to get through the unknowns of what it's going to take to get there. And I don't know. I don't do predictive stuff. I don't know. But it's the energy is certainly there.
And, it's interesting because I do know numerology just a little, or do, kind of work with that system a little bit, that modality. Is we're in a global 4-year, and 4 is the energy of building. It's also becoming, it's the energy of being a teacher and becoming a teacher. And it's also the energy of, essentially, it's the Gaia number because it represents the 4 elements, but the building blocks. And then when we get into the personal or the global 5-year, we add into it the 5th element of Aether. And so that's when things really start to shift and change. And so all of that really feels like, for this next year, we're in that energy. And if you think about building, it's also alchemy, transmutation. And it's in the thick of it. It's all a part of it. I think the 4 is just as much fun as the 5 or, the 7 in truth.
It's all an amazing journey. Mm-hmm. When I looked at this for the first time, so just a couple of things on Saturn, Pluto. Saturn dances back and forth into Aquarius, goes retrograde, back into Capricorn, back into Aquarius, back into retrograde Capricorn twice this year. So we're going to bounce. And then finally it takes off into Aquarius. And I'm sorry, Saturn does it one time. Pluto does it twice. Pluto starts in 2023. And finally, by 2024, it is fully on into Aquarius. So we're in the big macro of this for, if you look back historically, 30 to 50 years to complete the changes that get triggered right now. Now, here's what happened. So back to the little story of the fear and the guillotine and all of that. Yeah. When I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, whatever happens in the macro also happens in the micro, right?
Yes.
So if we're conscious and we're awake and we're aware of these energies, then we can get on the positive sides of Saturn and Pluto, which is all about transformation.
Always.
Of our soul, right? So it's almost like we all collectively, we all came to this earth at this time for this energy. You don't think we didn't know that we were going to have this opportunity? Mm-hmm. It's like, bring your bag of stuff because you're going to get to really deal with it if you wake up.
Right.
So what happened is Majana and I were doing a walk on the Sunday before the conjunction. So 1 week before January 12th. And what happened is it was kind of funny. When you get up to my age, these things now start to become a factor. That we were down at there was a turnaround point and it was 30 minutes back to the bathroom. And I'm going, okay, time to use your tools. You can make it. I can make it. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it. I'm going to be all right. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, I'll just create that the bathroom is empty. There's this playground and there's just one facility there and it's pretty busy. And it was a beautiful day, beautiful afternoon. And right in the middle of Sunday morning, everybody's out walking. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. So I just thought, I just did our typical little creating that the bathroom is empty. Uh-huh. And I mean, instantly I got this, oh, no, it's not. It'll be full. The cars will be lined up and there will be 5 people out there and you're going to be, out of luck. And my turnaround with that was first to observe it, just observe the thought. Mm-hmm. And then to ask, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Why? Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm the guy with 200 podcasts about this. What's up?
Well, they don't apply to you. Like, the work that you do doesn't apply to you. That's when sometimes I'm like,
hello.
Oh. I've had like a student or a client, or my assistant, parrot back to me my own words. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
But that's
it's like
so fun,
it starts here. Yeah.
Yes.
And my whole podcast has been just a diary of my own stories. Mm-hmm. So I love playing with this because it's like, wow, okay. So that's what I did. I was like, where did this come from? Mm-hmm. And I just asked inside and I started to do some little muscle testing and intuitive listening and had this little dialogue for about the next 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And basically what I asked was this, okay, so this is subconscious, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Was it a belief? Was it a created belief? No. Very clear. I do a little muscle test. I was doing 2 kinds. I do this where you rub your fingers together and you get friction.
Okay.
I was doing that. And then I also do one where I, show me a yes and it'll lock down, show me a no and it'll break loose like that. Uh-huh. So I was playing with that. And
when you do the finger rubbing, are you feeling for a certain kind of resonance temperature,
For me, it
charge?
goes smooth. Like
Okay.
the fingers will just
Oh,
really freely move.
Okay.
There's no, it's almost like they're greased with
Okay.
olive oil or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side, a no, is they get so sticky you can almost not move them together.
That's fascinating. So there's basically a really strong observational scientific approach there, because we're talking about skin conducting. You're kind of doing your own biofeedback. There's your skin conductant. When you put biofeedback skin conductance on someone, instantly the moisture on the surface of the skin changes with the exact moment of a thought that is discordant or harmonious. What's the word I'm looking? What's the opposite of discordant? Resonant. A resonant thought, feeling, experience, state. And so that's really cool. I've never heard of the finger rubbing one. That's really mine is just like the feeling, like my whole body, and it's usually centered around the heart and the solar plexus area.
And that's the other is I love, the easiest way to explain it is Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's the blink.
Yeah.
Don't think about it. It's the blink. And you get that feeling, like you say, you get it generally in the solar plexus area.
Uh-huh.
So the dialogue was, yes, this was subconscious. It was not in this lifetime. So then I asked, well, okay, was it mom's womb? No. Was it before that? Yes. And then I remembered the guillotine session under hypnosis. Yeah. And I said, was it related to that? Yes. And I mean, clear yes. Yes. It was that ding, ding, ding. We had found the source. Okay. Wow. So it goes back to that. So there's the source of the fear. Yeah. So that put that whole thing together. And then I just kept walking and just stayed with that. No thought, really, just walking. And then the perception came that it was not, typically with a guillotine, and I don't want to be crude here, but I want you to get the magnitude of this. For a soul that was imprinted with this emotion, that was dragged through centuries of life, multiple lifetimes, finally culminating under Saturn and Pluto and being exposed on a walk around the park.
Wow.
I know. Pretty amazing.
It is.
The guillotine was not face down. It was face up.
Oh.
And there was the...
My goodness.
Okay. A few steps later, it was not a guillotine. What I saw very clearly, and you can appreciate this, having studied and practicing hypnotherapy, that again, the walk is kind of a form of trance for me. Definitely. So I think there's that same connection. And what it even magnified a little bit more, and I saw, typical medieval kind of thing, hooded, the medieval axes, those big axes like this, and a foot up on my chest. And they were literally just whack, whack, whack. Pew, lights out. Now, would you think that Earth was a safe place?
Right.
Would you think that any form? Well, and look at how everything now goes into a thread. And like I said, folks, I really didn't want to shock you or offend with that.
No. It's open.
Today we're, that's kind of gruesome. And think about it from this standpoint. All you have to do is all I did was just observe. I was like, wow, man, I get it now. Yeah. Woo. Okay. So running away from breaking the glass, I'm going to be a kid. I'm going to get my head cut off. Right. I'm just a kid. I'm only reacting to what I brought in with me. Broken glass in the garage, angry mom, trial, sentencing, punishment.
Yeah.
Right?
For real. That's what it feels like. That's the experience, the state that is happening. And so, right, with that the little kid running from the broken glass is truly the same state as being at the guillotine. It really is.
Boss calls you down to his or her office.
Yeah.
Here it comes.
Fight, flight. And here's the thing, is something that I gave myself permission to recently. I said to myself, you have permission to never access a state of fight, flight ever again. You have permission to. I'm not holding myself, I'm not giving myself a directive, but we really only need fight, flight if we are running for our lives. And that's hasn't happened to me in a very long time. It happened to me like once that I can recall. In truth, you know what I mean? Wow. I was being chased by someone on the street who was not well. But yeah, if we're not being chased or pursued, for our physical lives, and maybe it happens sometimes on the freeway or something like that, it's natural. But we activate fight, flight. Even just the state of worry, anxiety, or depression that we're walking around with is activating that what is primal and not modern in the way that we've built our lives now. And so it is the reality that you're living, and the picturing of it being a past life where you're on a guillotine is real in your being, in your body, in the state that you're holding.
That's the work of the subconscious and the soul.
Yes.
And that's the work that you're doing. It's the work that I'm putting out there. It's what Majana and I are wanting to advance, is helping people get free of these impressions, whether they came through in this life or they were brought in, and how horrific they were or not. We're all dealing with something. And I think the wake-up call for me in this was, and this is pretty fresh still in my work, is now the inquiry to take a look at how much of this is truly brought in.
Yeah.
That this is so much more than just the experience of our time in this incarnation at this time.
And the option of having it there as a learning opportunity, the information, at this point, it's information that we can utilize, rather than having it be in the unconscious where it is sort of utilizing us and disempowering us. The information, then we become sovereign to it when we deepen our awareness about it and around it. And then we can recognize, because again, we are not beholden to any kind of linear time, that there is still an opportunity for the one who is at the guillotine to have released the energy around it instantly. And so you can kind of do that reclaiming of the soul energy that was arrested in some kind of fear for all this time in this now. And it changes timelines, because we are superior to timelines being omnidimensional.
Isn't that the truth? That's well said.
Thank you.
Roll that back and play that again when you edit this. That was good. No, because the release was just in the observation.
Yes.
I didn't have to do anything.
Right.
Now I can just go, oh yeah, wait a minute. I don't have to do that anymore. It's, the amazing thing is the grip that it had on my whole being.
Right.
And I was raised by great parents. There was no child abuse. My goodness sakes, no. In fact, the opposite. I grew up in an environment that never would have created or fostered that. This could only have come from something else.
And it's in the ether anyway. It's in the collective unconsciousness, which we are all plugged into. So it is true. Well, I did have a very challenging childhood, and someone else like yourself has a wonderful childhood, but we're still a part of this human experience where the collective unconsciousness is a part of the individual unconscious. And that's how we're accessing these past or parallel timelines and events to help us to have those archetypes, because from this perspective, the guillotine is not physically happening to you, so it serves as a sort of archetype, and which is not to diminish its reality at all, but it is there to still help you to do that growth. It's still available to you as that contrast to help you to do the growth that maybe I did because I did have abuse, and but even so, there's just endless opportunities, because we are eternal beings, to be able to continue to resource all of these past, parallel, and and in this current life experiences.
Are you familiar with Fred Dodson's book, Parallel Universes of Self?
No, I just discovered him from you, discovering you.
That's a good one. You'll have to check that out.
Okay. No, I will.
Was one of the early, I think the book was written back in 2008 or 10. been a while, but he was really I think one of the first ones to write a book on parallel realities.
Really? 2008. Well, I mean, Dolores Cannon was talking about the convoluted universe, but still, it's kind of not exactly parallel reality, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, that's on the list, and everyone else.
We'll have to check that out.
Fred Dodson is an author that Thomas voices his audiobooks, and I came across the Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast in which Thomas was just reading an excerpt. It's a 10-minute podcast, y'all. And he's reading an excerpt. He got the permission from Mr. Dodson, the author, to just read this one little excerpt. And can I tell you, I sent it to a dozen people and said, it's 10 minutes. Listen right now.
Oh.
And it's a credit to the author, but it's also a credit to, your selecting and asking him for it, and also your voicing of it, because the authenticity that comes through the narrator, the voiceover artist, is really important in that work, the performer. Because I've gotten audiobooks where it can be either the author and the author's not, that's not really their talent or their lane to actually voice their own work. I've gotten other ones where it is a voiceover artist, a narrator, and you can tell they don't really connect with the material. So that sweet spot is so beautiful, and so I just want to commend you to that. I mean, I love voice work, so I'm a little bit of a nerd about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, coming from somebody in Burbank too. That's like you're in like you don't have an ear. Yes, you do. Thank you very much, Trish. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you. Are you a student or a reader of Neville Goddard?
Yes.
Of course. I'm like, if you're not, then I'm going to blow your mind right now. But of course, it would be impossible for you to not be. So yes, Neville Goddard he's passed now, a teacher and an author. And I mean, just like Feeling is the Secret, it is what I think it's a 60-page book. Mm-hmm, and it's like, I read one line and I'm like, oh, got to put it down. That's enough for today. Whew. Yeah. It's so great. You know what I mean? It's so juicy. But Fred's work is I think very much like that. So
yeah, Fred's is comparable.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it spoke to me, and I'll tell you the amazing thing. One of my favorites, and I know you probably tell people this, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
I know. Absolutely.
And I was literally, this was 2013. So I was about 3 or 4 years into this new way of being. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had to reconstruct my whole belief system.
And can I just say that's so brave of you, because having come from the evangelical Christian experience, it's scary. It is scary. The depth of that threat of blaspheming the Holy Spirit and everything. And also it's confusing because you probably, like me, truly loved Jesus and Christ and Christhood and had a true experience with whatever God meant. And you have this, I guess you could say, programming or even brainwashing that somehow you would be denying that as well. And so it's confusing and it's scary. So I have to say, commend you for being so brave and doing that. And when you get out on the other side and you finally do it, you're like, oh, actually, I have more of what it was that is the truth about that. But you don't know until you do it.
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's so freeing to be in this space of non-judgment.
Right.
One of the last dominoes for me to fall was the concept of sin.
Mm-hmm.
I was having dinner with a guy that was recently on my podcast, Daniel Denovi.
Okay.
And he said that. He said, well, just what do you think about if there was no such thing as sin? I was like, my whole world had been built around that there was sin.
Right.
And here was the alternative. And here was how you dealt with it. And it's the human dilemma. And boy, I got to thinking about that. And finally, I realized, well, of course, because now I think, if I'm right, from what I've seen, there are more denominations than there are verses in the Bible.
I know. And
there are 23,000 denominations and there are 22,000 something verses in the Bible.
And just think about how, so then there is some kind of globalized experience of what is sin or right or wrong. Not only that, then it's also that the person in the pew behind you has a different version of it too. Like there's no, this math does not compute.
Right. Exactly. I mean, where does the interpretation begin?
Yeah.
Or stop? It ends where I get offended, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, we can't agree on the definition of sin, for one. So if everything just was, as Daniel challenged me, if everything was just so, and see, this is where Fred came in again. He did a book called Levels of Energy. It's basically the same theme as David R. Hawkins did with Power versus Force. It's just in a much easier way to understand. But it's that things that the whole physical and non-physical realities operate in an energetic stratus, basically a ladder, if you will, from low energy to high energy. And that doesn't seem so complicated to understand, but boy, we have a hard time implementing it when we think that anger or fear or greed or guilt or all those things that we could throw into the bucket of low energy are lower than love and peace and beauty and creativity.
Right.
You think, well, duh, but what do we do when somebody cuts us off in traffic? Instantly we go to low energy.
Fight, flight. Yeah. Denial, separation.
It's our reaction. We don't, somebody cuts us off in traffic. I mean, first of all, that was my spot, it was like, and we don't send them love. We don't thank them, gratitude, higher emotion. That's when all the horns start flying and, fingers and everything else. And yet when you think about the structure of low energy, high energy, well, that's heaven and hell. And when you just extend it out into the non-physical, which he did in 2 subsequent books of Levels of Energy, Volume 2 and Volume 3, you take it out into the non-physical. And that's where we get into a whole nother discussion, but angels and demons, if you want to go there. But, that's, it's just basically the whole system operates on this structure of energy.
Structure. This is what I speak to my students about, that there is structure in the universe, but there truly is no hierarchy because there's only one energy. But there is structure in the way that there is structure to a story, which facilitates us having an experience and growing by the structure. I recently did, as you saw, that I am doing a sort of series within my whole podcast, a little mini episodic on the metaphysics of the Bible. And I think it was the last episode, actually, I did talk about sin. And what I find fascinating, I love words. Words are, they are bubbling, we don't create them by accident. They are a representation of the subconscious. And yet they are limited. They're just actually, in the excerpt of that podcast that I tell everyone, Fred talks about belief wrappers. And so they're sort of, words are just packages, or they're signposts pointing to a frequency, but the frequency is much less, is not limited. It is unlimited, because it will, as it is aligned with love, then it's going to lead you to the frequency, the shade of energy that's next to it, and so on and so forth. The word sin, in the way that we use it in the English language, is derived from archery, when you miss the mark. And that alone, just freeing it from a judgment and the decision that there is something that is right or wrong, in a pejorative, in a separated way, just missed the mark, just a mistake. And, I'm in Hollywood, you have a mistake, but you always have another take. And so it's okay. You learned from it.
You get to do it again.
You get to do, yeah.
Right.
And so there is learning to happen in sin or a mistake, because there's perhaps something, if it's not correct, is maybe better than right or wrong. Correct for what will lead you to that higher alignment of your frequency, then there's learning. And the learning may look like making amends or atoning, and that's all a part of healing, and that's all a part of growth. And words, to me, it's like when we're talking about that spectrum of frequency, and the frequency of love, and then, maybe at the bottom of that frequency is fear. And the words that you mentioned, like peace, clarity, and of course love, those are more like living words. Those are like beings of light. Those are eternal. Those are true. They exist on all of the dimensions because they're aligned with the one, and they are the one. But then words that are separation oriented are like the thought forms that do not exist on all of the dimensions. They don't exist on the higher dimensions, so they're more of the limited thought forms. And it's this idea, this principle of living words, alive words, and thought forms, which are limited and kind of constrained in something that is more of that discordant energy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And that's what sin or mistake or incorrectness gives us the opportunity to go into that growth experience.
Here's a great story with an example of how quickly we can fall out of that higher level when we get in our daily routine. Mm-hmm. Fred gave me permission to package this and take it out in a little trial course that we're still playing with. I'd say it's still in beta, but I presented it to a group of realtors. And the gentleman who owned the franchise of this real estate firm had worked with a friend of mine on pitching to sell her home. Now, this friend is an elderly lady, so coming in hot is not the way to appeal to her or to win the contract. So this guy came in hot. He had another associate with him from the firm. They came in, they made their big pitch. He was like, da, 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 da. And boy, I'm sure he left thinking, man, I was on, Mm-hmm. But there was zero connection with her.
Yeah.
And she was actually offended because it was so strong and because he didn't ask about her dog, Oh. And somebody else obviously got the contract. It was a multi-million-dollar home. So when we did the he asked me to come do this presentation at his firm. And what was funny is one of his big producers in the audience, after we talked about, love and connection and compassion and those higher emotions that we're talking about are higher than driving your own agenda.
Yes.
And she was like, well, yeah, that's what we do every day. And this owner of the firm raised his hand and he said, let me tell you a story. And he completely ratted on himself. It was perfect. And he said, look, I sat out there in the parking in the driveway and said, let's get out in and out of here in less than an hour. Mm-hmm. He was completely in his own lower energy, self-driven greed primarily. Let's get this contract and let's get this house sold so that we can make some more money. Mm-hmm. And at the top of the scale, the top of the structure, was a little old lady with a dog who just wanted to be talking about the weather. And she's a Gemini too, by the way, and you don't talk about anything for very long. You flirt around, you come back and we're over here. And what about the Broncos? This was in Colorado, Mm-hmm. You talk about things around to get to the point. And had he done that, he would have made several six figures a couple of times over on commissions. So when we think about the structure of this and applying it in our life and those moments that we get caught short when our lower emotions, our lower self takes back over and we get angry or we get snappy or we get grumpy or we go down the scale, it's just a great reminder to bring ourselves back up. Wait a minute. It's all about the other person. It's about the connection. It's about the love. It's about the giving. It's about the release of ourself. Mm-hmm. Those are the higher emotions. And well, what do we naturally attract when we swim in the lower pond? Right. Right? We attract the muck.
Right.
And what do we naturally attract? I mean, the universe will just provide when we live from love and we live from concern of others and we put others first and we're thinking more about the gratitude and the peace and the joy and service rather than what we can get. And we get a whole different outcome.
So true. The way that creation happens is by positively charged energy. And, we say positive and negative and we think good and bad, and that's fine. But there's, getting into words again, there's no coincidence that positively charged energy is the energy that, so far as from the perspective of physics or physical energy, is the energy that actually builds and creates. Now, negative energy is that which dematerializes and composts and transmutes, and that's all great too. But the positive energy is the building energy, and the negative energy is the negating energy. So if you bring that limited energy into something that would be a sales pitch, you're in Texas, so I have to call myself out. I just said energy. That's my Texas accent coming out. Limited energy. I always say, this is my fake accent. Limited energy. The negating energy, then it's going to create a relationship, an anti-relationship. It's going to negate the possibility of connection and contact. And that's what she was there for. The lady with the dog. She was there to connect.
Right. Exactly.
And it works in every industry. It's we're not just a couple of woo-woos here. It's just true. And there are cleverer and wiser kinds of even industries, like, for example, I think Google and everything, and they're actually bringing mindset and recognizing it just from that place of wisdom, that's actually how success happens, is connection. You can't really get around it.
They're teaching it all over the world now. Google is, from a nonprofit that was incubated out of Google.
Right.
And interestingly, my partner, Majana, is licensed in that and certified, and she's putting a program together to take that out. So
amazing. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that's what can heal families. It can heal workplaces. It can heal any environment. Is when we acknowledge and respect the other. And we have, again, this word that keeps coming up. I wonder why the word structure keeps coming up while we're sitting under Saturn and Pluto.
In Capricorn.
Yeah. But when we have that structure of connection and that structure of communication that honors the other person,
yes,
it can shift so much. By the way, can I just mention one thing?
Please.
That podcast that you're talking about, if you go to Subconscious Mind Mastery and find that podcast, it's one of the ones that was released in January 2020, and it was called Belief Wrappers. So just wanted to make sure people could find that, because I would hearing those voices in my headphones saying, where can I get that podcast?
Totally. Well, yeah. And by the way, link in the description, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on a podcast outlet, link will be right there in the description too. So you can.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Thank you. That's great. That's awesome.
Yes. It's 10 minutes, and I listened to it 4 times in a row on the first day that I heard it. And then I
emailed Fred. So that's from a book of collection of, it's like 42 little 10-minute vignettes.
Like essays,
of all kinds of topics.
Love it. That's great.
Yeah, it's because you can sample what works for you, and then things that don't apply, you can just skip to the next chapter.
That's so great. What a great structure.
That was chapter 26, and when I landed on that, I emailed him immediately, and I said, "Oh my gosh, can I make a podcast of this? I hadn't finished the book yet."
Yeah.
And I said, "Can we just make it a little tease?" The book's actually, as we're talking right now, the end of January 2020. The book is not quite out yet. Audible is doing their final stuff, and it will be soon. But it's called Essays of Creating Reality, Book 4. That's where it lives, along with several other. Actually, a couple of the chapters right after it were really good too. But that one was a standout. He came back and he said, "Yeah, that was my favorite chapter too."
Yeah. Well, pass on to him that, how excited I am, and many others that are being turned on to it, because I think it's really brilliant and so clear. And actually, it inspired my last couple of episodes ago of this podcast to partially, at least in part, inspired it with my friend Crystal-Ann Compton. We did an episode talking about the fourth dimension, entities, ghosts, and thought forms. Very much talked about thought forms, partly because he talks about thought forms so much in Belief Wrappers, and the gift and the really almost like the main thing kind of I think we came here to do, which was to understand that we manipulate energy, and we can use thought forms in a positive manner. And I mean, like, The idea of thought forms, it's a gradient scale. So like I was saying, even just a word is a thought form or a habit or a ritual, so long as we are maintaining our place of mastery and recognizing it as or creator of it, and recognizing it is the creation that is facilitating, and that an interest, and then we actually partner with our creation to create something new, which is what source energy did with us, does with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wanted to.
And that thought doesn't necessarily, I mean, that thought form, obviously it can be a word or it can be just self-talk.
It can be so much. And then onto, the crazy things that Crystal and I got into in that episode. And we talk about it becoming something that is more sophisticated in the etheric realm, and it can attract to it some entity, and you know what I mean? Like all of that. But again, it's all there as a pattern to show you what you are creating, whether it be conscious or unconscious. And you are always master of it, because you are co-master with every single other expression of source energy, one energy.
I landed on that as I was, as you say, taking a look and doing some research on your work, and didn't have time to get all the way through it, but now I will. I'm gonna go back and I can't wait to digest your series on the Bible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. A lot of the episodes are shorter.
Seeing what you have to say there. Yeah.
It's so fun. It's like, I feel like I'm calling this a mini series but I feel like I could talk on it forever. There's just so much fun in that work, because I really and truly did have my spiritual growth initially in partnership with that system. So there's, in any sacred work, any system of humanity, there is probably gold. There is truth.
Mm-hmm. And there's distortion.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I wanted to ask you, do you work with human design at all? Do you know this system?
I do. And I do know it. I've tried to visit it a couple of times, and here's where I am with it. Maybe you could give me some advice.
Well, I'm new to it, and I'm no teacher or expert, but yeah, let me hear. We'll see.
So here's the thing. I think it's a very interesting system. I was incorporating it into some readings that I was doing, and then I stopped because I found a couple of other things inside ancient astrology that I think are more tangible and significant. Fred taught me one thing that so transformative: keep things simple.
Totally. Yes. And even if you're learning a complex system, keep your learning of it simple. Like astrology to me is very complex. I am no astrologer, but working with my sun, moon, and ascendant is simple. You know what I mean? Like I can, and then, I'll expand into other areas as it is simple. I like that. Yeah, that's great advice.
So being someone who historically had overcomplicated much of my life in various ways, I've taken that to heart. So what I've tried to do is incorporate and find things that are simpler, or as you say, even taking a complex thing and breaking it down into something that is simple. I haven't been able to do that yet with human design. It's a complex system to me.
Well, see, and it is, but again, you're an astrologer, so like, that to me that's like telling me, why don't you learn Chinese tomorrow? And I'm like, what? Oh,
right.
So what I like about human design is the teachers of it and the founder of it really keep it simple, and their suggestion is to just work with your strategy and authority, and those are like very simply mapped out in, for example, if you are a generator, that's one of the types. You're a generator. Right. Okay.
I'm a generator. Yep.
I'm pretty good at intuiting. Actually, I'll just say that so far in my reading of someone's type, I can, because I'm actually a reflector, which is so I feel how the aura works in a person, and then it's pretty easy. Yeah. So the generator is the strategy is to wait to respond, and then the authority depends on the other parts of your chart, but perhaps it is emotional, and that's your authority. And that's your inner authority. And that's just experiment with it. And I like how the suggestion of the teachers is always just experiment with it and see how that works for you. And so that's where I am with it. And but I was curious because you are an astrologer and it does utilize astrology as one of the modalities.
Oh, I love another system. If you haven't found this one too, is called Destiny Cards.
Okay.
Robert Lee Camp.
Destiny Cards.
Destiny Cards. That's a fascinating system that takes a 52 deck of cards, and the tool goes back to ancient Egypt. Mm-hmm. In fact, supposedly the history is that using that deck and the four suits did not become recreational until like around the time of Napoleon.
Right.
So we're going back to, and it was brought through by the Magi Society. Mm-hmm. Boy, you talk about some, whoa, you look at that and you're going, oh my goodness. I mean, it reads you like a book.
Oh, cool.
And it breaks things out in periods of 13. So 13 years, 13 weeks, cycles, and it's planetary based as well. But really cool. Back to human design, mm-hmm. I just finished narrating a book for Stephen Forrest. He's one of the premier astrologers in the world. And oh my gosh, is he a great writer. And it was called his Book of Fire. It's an elements series. So the next one that I'm working on is the Book of Earth, and then the Book of Air, and then the Book of Water.
I work with, I work with the elemental realms. It's very much, so that's exciting to me. That's how
listen, the Book of Fire is so good.
That's how I kind of relate to astrology fundamentally, is by the elements, mm-hmm. because that's mm-hmm. what I feel deeply.
Well, you would love this series then, because it's written in non-astrology ease. You don't have to be an astrologer. You don't have to know anything about it. He starts talking about fire, mm-hmm. because the chart, obviously the tropical zodiac that we follow in Western astrology, begins in the spring with Aries in the first house. And he talks about, you walk out on your porch one spring morning and you see a little nest up in a tree, and you look up in the nest and you see 5 little eggs in the nest, and you check back in a few days and there are 5 little baby robins that are demanding food. They're demanding a right to live. Yeah. You know, they want life. And he equates that to fire. You know, that's fire energy. So it's really cool how he threads it all together.
Ooh, that wins my heart. If you're going to talk about baby animals, I'm in.
All in. Right. And one of the recurring themes through his book that I just loved, this was so good, is you take an astrological chart. Okay, that's an imprint of energy, mm-hmm. at the very moment of our birth, right? And that stays with us. So we, in one way or another, what he was saying is those energies are going to show up in our life, whether we're conscious to astrology or not. Those play outs, if you will, are going to unfold through the synchronicities of our life. They're going to present us with the opportunities to live that chart or to not live that chart. And that's where I don't get into predictive stuff, because right. I think we have the ultimate vote.
Right.
We have free will. We have choice. And the synchronicities of the energies that when we get locked onto that, and that's where I think these planetary-based systems are so just amazing. Mm-hmm. Human design, I'm a generator. So what that says is wait for the opportunities.
Yeah.
Wait for the synchronicities.
Yes.
And then I'm sacral. Go with your gut, even through, as it says, a verbal, where you're connecting with, mm-hmm.
Yes.
For those of you sacrals, you'll know what I'm talking about. Where you give, and you're resonating with that sound or that tone, and you're connecting that with what you feel in your gut.
Yeah.
And then you make your decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that is brilliant, because what it says is life will bring you all the opportunities that you need to stay on your path.
I love it. And how beautiful is that? Being so connected, yeah. And connected to, well, I teach and resonate so much with how as above, so below, nature is the imprint of spirit, and how the ecosystem just works perfectly. And this seed doesn't argue with the wind as it's being carried along and placed exactly where it will be most relevant and most nourished, and then thereby being able to give its greatest and highest offering back to the ecosystem.
I love that.
I one of my friends who is an astrologer too, she just has started to get interested in the human design system. And she says that, by the way, her name is Lauren Antufermo, my dear friend. She was on a few episodes ago. And she says what she's finding so awesome about human design is the applicability of it, and how it is teaching her about how she can actually utilize her aura and utilize her field and how it works. And that's also a very basic principle. There's a 7-minute video on YouTube channel called Jovian Archive, I think. And it's the founder of it, Ra Uruhu, talking about the 4 different aura types, and just really simply saying the generator has an open and enveloping aura. And like just that alone, I'm like, oh, then I know what generators feel like. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's
just look at their aura, right?
I just feel it. I'm a reflector, and my aura is sampling and also resilient because I have all open centers, and I'm the 1% of the population, completely open centers, and so I'm sampling everything. But because I'm so totally open, I can also release absolutely everything, sample but not identify to. So.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's how I feel it.
That's nice.
Oh my gosh, we are over time probably. I'm afraid I'm going to keep you all day long. This has been just so edifying, enlightening, inspiring. I really am so very grateful for you to have come on and to offer all the work that you're doing. Everyone, please do go find. I'm super excited about the Fun Astrology podcast, and find this Subconscious Mind Mastery. Find the books that Thomas is narrating. I mean, Fred Dodson, I'm his brand new super fan, and I can't wait to get deeply into all of these books.
It's amazing material.
Yeah.
It truly is life transformative for sure.
Is there anything else you would like to share as we wrap up this episode? I'm so very excited and proud to have been a part of, and so much gratitude to you, Thomas.
Yeah, well, and returning that back, thank you for, it's so amazing how the universe works. And when you just see it so many times over and over, that I was mentioning before we got going that Majan and I have had Los Angeles just in our awareness and our consciousness recently. And then here you just out of nowhere, I get this email and connect with you, and you're right plunk in the middle of it. My friend who sold the $6 million house is in Los Angeles now.
Well, that sounds like something to respond to. I'm just going to say, as a generator, I don't know.
I know, exactly, right? So we have another little commitment here, but, just to make contact with you, and I'd love to just here publicly invite you to come on Subconscious Mind Mastery. So if we could do this again for another hour, that would be great.
So honored. My goodness, please. Yes, thank you.
And would love to introduce the people who listen to my show to your work, because what I've seen, what you are doing, and the voice that you have, and just not only that, but the style in which you are doing it with excellence in every area says so much to me. That I would love to introduce, but it's the synchronicity. There's that again of all of this is just so amazing. So who knows where all of this goes? We'll do another interview and we'll just keep going from there. But thank you for inviting me on. And one of the ways that I close all of my podcast episodes is just to say, enjoy the journey, because that's what it is. It's a journey. And when we get to the point where we finally enjoy it, then it gets to be one heck of a ride. It truly does.
Indeed. Well, again, how wonderful. I want to give a shout out to my dear friend and colleague who is the one who suggested Subconscious Mind Mastery a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was. And it's my friend Jeremy Stangness. And I have to say hi, Jeremy, and thank you so much. And
hey, Jeremy, thank you.
Yeah.
From my perspective, appreciate that.
He's probably blushing right now, like, cause he's so sweet. And
Email me at thomas@subconsciousmindmastery.com and I'll send you a free audiobook download code. How about that?
Oh my gosh, that's
Jeremy.
amazing. Yeah, Jeremy, do
Yeah.
that, okay? Oh wow, how
Do it.
wonderful. All right. Thank you again to Thomas Miller, and I'm seeing it. Well, we have your is it subconsciousmindmastery.com? I was looking for the email for the website address. It's we have it in the description. Do check out
We're
all
in
of
the
his
process of consolidating our work. And basically, if you wanted to throw another one down, it's soulfoodtalks.com. So we're moving all of our podcasts to that and just a bunch of other stuff. So soulfoodtalks.com is probably going to be the best place to get us going forward.
Sounds great. All right. Are you still doing readings, by the way? I keep almost signing off, and then I have another question.
To close it, I'm doing a radio show here in Dallas. The pressure on my time right now is such that I needed to be off in integrity.
Yeah.
Steve Forrest, who I'm doing this book, if you get on his list to do a recorded reading, you will wait 4 years. I didn't want to do that just from a standpoint of not having people lingering that much, because so many people want to know information now.
Yeah.
And I got way behind when I opened up and started doing readings that people were waiting too long. So I wanted to complete what I had. I've got a really full plate for the next several months, and then we'll take a look at what we're going to do later when I get everything caught up and I can step back into it with integrity. So
I'm
on hold.
In the same way. I'm in the same boat. I'm not taking any new clients right now. I'm not. Yeah. I have some a small set that I'm working with, but with the teaching that I do and everything. And that's great. That's good. You know what I mean? Like that's how it is. That's the synchronicity of what's available, as you said earlier.
You know what we love, John and I love to do this, is sometimes people will write in, which we always appreciate, love getting the emails. And sometimes ones will just touch our heart, and we'll come in here in the booth and just send them an email, not an email answer, but a recorded answer.
Yeah.
It's like their own little podcast. Oh my gosh, people love that.
Yeah. Oh,
what a wonderful... Don't tell anybody, but we might do that.
That's a wonderful suggestion. Do you mind if I borrow it and steal it?
You may borrow it. Absolutely. People love it. You know, that's the connection. And see, here's the advantage of seeing a little bit around the corner through the astrology is that's where we're headed. We're headed to an Aquarian era of more social interaction, interconnectivity, the elevation of the group consciousness. Facebook is just, and Twitter, you know, social media just cracking the surface of what this wave is going to be. And that's where we're headed. So we might as well in any ways that we can to step down off of the stage or, you know, not be so isolated. John and I met just this week and talking about how can we make ourselves more intertwined with the community. And I think that's where this is headed. The idea of the teacher, you always have to have that position, but I mean, what we've done is just shared our journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not trying to put ourselves in the position of any kind of authority. We're sharing our lives. It's out there. It's raw, you know, living out loud on the internet for 7 years now. And I think powerful. The more that we can get interconnected with people, the more we can bring them into our worlds, the more we can share, the better.
Powerful. Yes. Yes to all of that. Well, with that, I will thank you again for this episode and invite everyone to check out all of Thomas's work and for any of the podcasts or YouTube or anything that you are watching or listening to, if you like, subscribe, comment, share, that is really enhancing the light. So I invite you to do that with this program, with all of Thomas's podcasts and work as well. And such an honor to have Thomas Miller on. And to everyone who is connecting, my deepest gratitude and appreciation to you. As always, thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.